thank you, and thanks for coming today. I'm from Tribal Worldwide. We're a partner of Jahia's. We work with them with one of our automotive clients. A little bit about me. I've been in this industry for 23 years in the kind of creative services consulting. I started at Ogilvy as a graduate in the days when they kind of shouted at you at Ogilvy and Mather and were told not to speak for 6 months, which was very hard for me. And then I went to TBWA, and actually it was so strange seeing Ken yesterday on the boat, because I was in a couple of those meetings as well with Steve Jobs when we all kind of sat in awe. And I worked on a Think Different campaign and the launch of the iMac and some of the products after then. And I was kind of at the other end of the scale, being very junior. It was my job to get the work into market. And in the UK, you know, we thought we were big and important, and we were just another market, and you were just told to make it work. And I'm very lucky. I've got a lovely email on my bathroom wall from Steve Jobs that says, "Thank you for basically doing your job and getting work through without any changes." Because in the UK, we're quite regulated in advertising. And they were making some, again, really simple claims to some of the conversations earlier about simplicity. You know, it was out of the box and online in 15 minutes, out of the box and online in 3 steps. And in the UK, the advertising guys said, "Go on then, prove it." And so we went, "Oh, well, here's some information and all of this." And the guys, they said, no, prove it. Get a computer, bring it into our office and show us. And so we finally got one shipped over. And this very boring man from the advertising, the BACC, as it turns out, stood there with a stopwatch and went, "Right, go." And I hadn't, and it had to be unsealed. I'd not seen the computer. I had to get it out and figure out how to get this thing online. And we did it, and it worked, and the ads ran as per Ken and his team wrote them. So I'm very pleased to say that at the other end of that scale, we managed to get the work out. But since then, I've worked in mobile agencies. I've worked at direct paper folding agencies and above-the-line advertising agencies. And I found myself at Tribal, which I think is this kind of great mix of art and science, I suppose. And what we did about a year ago was we started thinking about what experience is and what it means in its totality. And that's really where kind of total experience and the total experience agency kind of came from. And for us, it goes beyond digital. I often think about it, I kind of think of my mother in these moments, because when I talk to my mum about brands, she doesn't sit around like us lot and go, "Oh, look, you know, their checkout experience, not very good." Or a brand X has got terrible above-the-line advertising, or, you know, I don't really like their staff. My mum kind of goes, "I either like it or I don't." And that decision about the totality of a brand and all the sum of the parts, and all that effort is done in a nanosecond. And it got us thinking about what total experience means and how we can build an agency around that. So, where did it come from? Why total experience? Well, it started from a series of sort of thoughts, really, largely driven by alcohol, but we'll come back to that. Product was no longer enough, and it is no longer enough. It's been said by some of the other speakers. You know, you get a competitive advantage, but maybe only for a limited period of time. You can easily be copied or usurped by another brand. It really is that experience becomes that new battleground to create sustained competitive advantage, because it allows you to continue those conversations. And we realized that was that experience that a user, a customer, an employee, importantly, is part of, and in its totality, not just on a website, in a shop, on Alexa, on all of those things, is a huge part of the battleground for the future. And, you know, the obvious people, the guys at Forrester, you know, they know that better customer experience equals higher revenue growth. You know, the brands like JetBlue, Charles Schwab, Amazon, AT&T, brands that have invested in the United States in their experience in its totality, get better revenue growth than some of the laggards in their competitive sets. For us, though, when we dug deeper, we started to say, look, it's not just about the UX, it's the human approach, it's how your staff interact, it's how you deal with customer services and all of those things. And that really got us into the organizational structure of the brands and the clients that we work with, and understanding how they operate as businesses, and realizing that they're so powerful and so important in the way that those brands go and present themselves. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, particularly with Volkswagen, but also with some of our other clients in the pharma sector. We also know that kind of technology empowers this human and employee experience. It can create operational efficiencies, but it also can get in the way, and we're often trying to pare it back and get technology out of the way. One of the things we found with Volkswagen, particularly it's Volkswagen a big client globally, but for us at Tribal in London, when you're in a car dealership, yeah, there's technology, there's lots of cars, there's lots of stuff going on, but actually the main interaction is between the customer and the salesperson. That's where 80% of the kind of information that's passed happens. And so often we're trying to get technology out of the way, and let it become an embellishment to that conversation, not a barrier. But there are some things holding us back. You know, we find in the totality of what total experience is, there is low visibility of success stories because brands so often are built in silos. You know, we'll talk to the UX guys that only deal with the website, but we don't do anything with the app, that's not us. Or I don't know what customer services do, we outsource that to Accenture. So one of the challenges we've always found is how do we start to influence and infiltrate some of these areas that we're not necessarily experts in, but we know they have a direct consequence and a direct impact upon customer satisfaction, sales, repeat purchase, all of those things. We also are finding, although we've spent a year hunting for the right folks, that resources are scarce. You know, you do get folk that go, yeah, I'm brilliant at UX. Yeah, but what about UX in a shop? What about your client service, the way that we train people? Have you ever thought about how we build an application and then pass that over to trainers? Those kind of things. Often with clients, we get a little bit of top-down support that doesn't happen. You know, trying to convince CMOs or managing directors that the big spend that we're putting out or we're asking for, you know, it needs that support, and they're kind of like, I don't think about this stuff. Someone else does that. So we try and get that. We raise the value of it in the organization. And then there are preconceptions of design. There's a whole bunch of areas about how we must go about doing things, and often we tear that up and start again. So a question I guess we've thought about for this presentation and for some of the work we do with our clients is how do you design for total experience? I'm going to take you through kind of 6 principles, I guess, that we use and talk about some of the examples and some of the work we do with our clients and kind of show you how we wrap that up into total experience. The first one is about behavior change. I think the internet for me is quite a funny thing. You know, it's sort of 20, 30 years old. It's accelerated quickly. But when you compare that to, say, the car industry, cars in the 20s and 30s were pretty crap, right? As someone said earlier, they broke down, roads didn't work. They weren't very good. I still think we're in the real the embryonic beginnings of what we can do with it here. And actually, in many cases, we're trying to change customers' and users' behavior. And a good example of that is in the UK with car dealerships. For 100+ years, we've told customers, you want to book a service, call your local dealer, make a phone call, book your car in. That's what people do. We build services on on Volkswagen's website, lots of other car websites. So you can book it online. It's not a problem. People don't use it. They don't use it in enough quantities that are comparative to internet usage. And it's all about behaviour change. It's not because they don't want to use it. They've just been told that that's what they should do. The same applies to train tickets. You want to buy a train ticket? Go to a station. You can buy it online, but no one does it, not in any great volume. So we start to think about behaviour change, and not just our customers, but how the staff and the employees of an organisation can be part of that process. So we always design for change. Data is hugely important. We can, as many folks have said here at this conference, we're awash with data. It's all very good, yeah, very insightful. Tells us what we're doing today, tells us what we did yesterday. Do we actually really use it to turn it into an action that we can do tomorrow? And we do a lot of work, again, trains are a good example here. Trains are late in the UK, a lot. But if you tell people they're going to be late, the perception of the quality of service goes up. The train's still late. Doesn't matter, the train's still coming 5 minutes late. But I know it's coming 5 minutes late, therefore I feel better. So what we do with a lot of our clients is we spend an enormous amount of time talking about how we use the information that they've got to improve that experience. So, for example, when we're talking to Volkswagen, we do a lot of work with their customer services guys, and we help them with the information that's embedded about a customer, and we can surface it much quicker when people are calling. GDPR has changed this somewhat, and it hasn't been fun. Despite what other people have said, it's been an absolute pain in the neck. But we'll gloss over that. But what we find, though, with the information is that we're constantly trying to stop just reporting. Tell people how many folks went into the website last month. Frankly, I don't care. I want to know how many people are coming in this month and next month. And what are we going to do to improve it? And how are we going to kind of use that information and gather insight in a much better way? And we work, our data team in London and in Kuala Lumpur spend more of their time now thinking about that, using AI, using various tools and so on, but move from reporting to an actual action. We also talk about designing for scale and the power of co-creation. One of the things we find working with Jahia and the great platform that we've got here is that we do spend more time now, and we're able to, because of the technologies that we work with, designing the scale for markets and all of those areas, but also do it with the people that are using the site and using sites or the tools. This is some work we did with Johnson & Johnson for surgeons in the United States. This work we won it last year. Not one individual at Tribal knew anything about what the Johnson & Johnson Institute does. It talks to very senior surgeons who have very little time, even less patience, and really want to get to the nub of what their specialism is immediately. And if they don't, you're kind of thrown away. We didn't know anything about this world. So we went and spoke to them, and we worked hand in glove with these guys and built this community that is a learning portal for surgeons in the United States. And it was a lovely project that enabled us to create a really different interface for this sector, but also one that got people to the right information at the right time. And you can imagine an orthopedic surgeon who specializes in hips wants to get to the hip bit a lot just as quickly as somebody who specializes in cardiothoracic surgery. And if they get sent down the wrong rabbit hole, it just doesn't work. So we really want to work with folks to do that. This is the hardest chart and the most boring. I won't lie. We decouple back-end and front-end services. And those that know me know I don't really know how the internet works. It's some sort of magic. But Andrew Lyles, my CTO, he and I, we go on my little digital breakfast, and he tells me how the internet works, demystifies it. But historically, What we've done is we've coupled front and back end services, usually through a CMS and through that web front end, and we've built mobile apps separately and so on. What we've now done is we start to strip the front and back end services apart, and we use Jahia particularly for the things it does best. It's 90% of the volume of a website. For the rest, where the integrated content or functional bits that we're talking about in the red areas, we hook that into the front end using a single page JavaScript application. And we do that. They make calls to the APIs in the back end, and that allows us to be much more flexible. The important part for us is that we can test all the back end services away from the front end, see if they work. And then when we wire them up, it works much, much quicker. The teams love it at Tribal because it allows them to focus more on the functionality, and then we can start to talk to customers really where the rubber hits the road and make changes much earlier that would otherwise be more expensive going forwards. Unlock your brand is an odd statement, but we're seeing so many new ways for brands to be interacted with, often lately not owned by the brands themselves, and in new formats. So Alexa, Google Home, all of these things are playing a role. You can have a conversation with Volkswagen, or in this case Avios, who are one of our clients, through an Alexa interface. Well, Alexa suddenly is the manifestation of the Avios brand. Sounds like Alexa, smells like Alexa, talks like Alexa. So we've got to somehow augment Alexa to unlock the power of Avios. And we think about this a lot because prepare for those things, use your front and back end technologies to enable new interfaces to flourish. And we think when you think about all of those areas in the scale that we need to today, that starts to help solve some of those problems. AI is going to be a big part of this, I guess, in the future. We also, the last point is really about think about the future today. You know, it isn't about hacking, breaking, disrupting, changing entire businesses. You know, many of our clients do very well. They've got good 3, 4, 5-year business plans. You know, even the car companies have re-augmented themselves in the last kind of decade to cope with non-petroleum and non-diesel propulsion systems. But we also encourage our customers to think about where their business isn't necessarily going in 3, 4, or 5 years' time, but what it might do in 10 or 15. And often, they don't have enormous funds to think about that. So we say, do it quick, do it fast, and use services to throw things out that might not otherwise, and use tools and services to throw ideas out that might otherwise get forgotten about. So, you know, how does your business generate revenue? How can we play with some of that revenue? Are there opportunities to create additional revenue streams? All these kinds of questions that are up here. Can it play a bigger role in people's lives? Will an invention connect a customer opportunity to a business opportunity? We're working with a client at the moment who is, they're a manufacturer, and they've worked out a new way to produce basically a component that goes into an everyday object. And it is game-changing. But we have some processes that we work with these clients to think about the future. Because we were like, yeah, you're going to disrupt the business you're in. Brilliant, carry on. But what else can we use this technology for? And with a very small process that we call Bonsai, where it allowed us to really get under the skin of this technology, it allowed us to identify these insights and opportunity, get some concepts together and build that concept. We actually did it in about 4 weeks. And it wasn't very expensive. I think it was about £30,000 or £40,000. And it got the client to suddenly open up, the aperture open for all a bunch of businesses that are completely different to the one that they're in. And it's going to transform their business model going forwards. Not next year, probably not the year after, but maybe in 3 or 4 years' time. And the outputs of these are fairly obvious. Quick prototypes at each level, and then a package of assets that they can take ahead. So these 6 principles that I've kind of talked about: design to change behaviour, get information out to action, think about scale, decouple front and back end services because it gives you that freedom, unlock your brand, and think about the future today. We've wrapped them up at Tribal into a set of principles that take great customer experience, and we apply them then across the entire business. You look at the organizational enablers that a business has, how that affects both customer and employee experience, and then have a series of performance evolution and innovation cycle in the middle of that drives to a business outcome. And that was the blueprint for us going forwards. And then we reorganized our business in the same way. And this is my sort of shameless selling chart. Tribal have got 6 practices. We've got a business consultancy practice that we're in partnership with a company called April. And they are a classic management consultancy. And they can start unlocking some of these longer-term, non-digital problems that some of our clients and customers have. We marry that with good data science, where we can record and measure and predict where the future lies. When we marry that to our great CX led by Adam Powers, who's moved CX and UX on from just those UX, UI principles into what does it actually mean to an end user. And then we've got tech engineering led by Andrew Lyles, who is classic tech, heavy lifting, front and back end development guys who love working with Jahia because of its flexibility and your openness, actually, to make changes and work with us on those things. And then we attach that to great creative. We're part of DDB. So we work, Adam and Eve, DDB in London, are one of the best ad agencies in the world. And we're, again, looking at the totality of an experience. We take what goes on in those non-digital worlds and we make sure that they pull through into a digital experience and ultimately into an action. And then Spark, as I mentioned earlier, which is our innovation practice that does things like Bonsai, starts to look beyond that. So that's kind of us at Tribal and what we've been up to, and they're the principles of what we do. Does anyone have any questions? No? Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, sir. Very good.